Hey guys, welcome back to the Staying Christian podcast. My name's Eli Chamley.
And I am Gavin Hobbs.
That's Gavin. This is the Staying Christian podcast. We're a small, not sophisticated talk show where we talk about becoming Christian, staying Christian, and what are you doing?
I'm bopping to the music.
Anyways,
Continue with your description.
we'll get right into it. We've got an interview today with Gavin's uncle, David Dickerson. Fantastic man. Really love him.
Fantastic interview.
Yeah.
You can hear about how he pretty much died from a horse jumping onto him.
He almost died, but
Yep.
he didn't.
Oh,
Surprise.
snap. Listen to the podcast to find out. Shameless plug.
We're literally talking about... Okay. Anyways, it's a good episode, good interview. We hope you enjoy it. And thanks for tuning in.
Peace. So today on the podcast, we have with us David Dickerson. And he's actually my uncle. So...
What? I didn't know that.
No. I was about to say, wait, what? I'm gullible. Anyways, so if you wouldn't mind, if you could give us like a brief who you are, what you do, just like not your story yet, but I first want listeners to understand, okay, who is this person that we're about to hear their story unfold through the ages?
Through the ages. Well,
Yeah.
I don't think I'm old enough to do it through the ages. So I'm David Dickerson, and I am Gavin's uncle. That's actually my full-time occupation.
Understandably so.
It has to
No.
be a full-time occupation.
No, I am his uncle, but so I am I guess a dad, kind of
Yes.
first and foremost. I know it. It's pretty apparent. So we've got 7 kids, and number 8 is on the way here. So my wife and I have been married for, I guess, 21 years. And I do design work, so I'm a product designer, which is I do things like website design and mobile app design, not development. And I work from home. I've been doing that mostly freelance for the past about 16, 17 years, kind of unofficially a little bit before that too. So
Did you do that Village Creative business with
I
my
did.
dad? Yeah.
Yep, I did. I
So you
actually
worked
did it
with my
for a
dad.
while before I worked with your dad. Yeah.
Cool.
Cool. So, without further ado, let's ask
The
what we
question.
asked. The question.
The question.
Boom.
One question to rule them all.
So-
yeah, you go ahead.
Well,
take
what
the
we
stage.
usually do is we kind of ask, since we're calling this section like of episodes the becoming Christian
Okay.
stuff. So we're asking people who are older and who we think are wiser than us, how they became a Christian and what their kind of journey through that was. So how did you become a Christian?
Okay. Wow. Well, I guess first I was pretty much raised in Christianity.
Mm-hmm.
So my folks, Gideon and Faith, they raised me, but they were part of a Baptist church in Florida,
Mm-hmm.
and I guess I was basically raised in that Baptist church until I was about 10 years old or so. My dad was the music minister for the church, and my mom played the piano. So we pretty much did church all the time, where we were at every service and so on. We homeschooled. So I was homeschooled growing up, and yeah, there was, I guess, I always knew of God, from a very early age. And, we had, I don't know the best way to say it, I guess, more than just nominal Christianity in the home. Mom and dad were pretty, I would say they really loved God a whole lot. And I know things, would go through seasons and so on, but, like my mom used to read us stories about missionaries and so on, all the time. Y'all know Jim Elliot, Nate Saint, and all that. So I was kind of raised on stories like that, and so I think it was just kind of always a set thing in my head that you're going to grow up and follow God. Now, that's all fine when you're a kid, but of course once you hit the age of starting to try to think for yourself and a teenager, then that's where things get a little bit more real and interesting. So when I was about 10 or 11, I guess it was back in about 1990. So my family is actually a pretty large family as well. I've got 6 siblings, and I'm number 2. They kept trying, but they really couldn't improve on. But anyway,
Number 1, number 2, man, top of the line.
No, if only that was true. And they were like, we got to do better than this.
Yeah.
We got to do better than this.
I was going to say, was your parents raising you when you said that earlier? Was that the full-time job as well?
That's right. So anyway, they were going to have a home birth with my younger sister, Amy. And she was number 5. And so they had a midwife come and help them with the birth, and that was Havla, and that's how we met Noah and Havla. And at that time they were doing kind of a home fellowship sort of thing out of their house, and they lived, I think it was about 2 hours away or so from where we were. We were down in the Orlando, Florida area, and they're up in Seminole County, a little town called Geneva. So we visited them a few times, and I really just kind of fell in love with the folks there. My parents really hit it off with them, and I know they were intrigued by what was going on there. I'm not going to give like a whole history of.
Oh no, you don't.
The church thing, but for me, that was kind of a pretty big pivotal point, I think, because. It's not like there wasn't a lot of nice people or so on in our church, but it was just, I don't know, it was just church. Like, I didn't like going to church when I got to be 9 or 10 or so on. Well, first you always had to wear slacks and a belt and a button-up shirt, or, I hated dressing up. And it just didn't, I don't know. It was boring. Honestly, it was just kind of boring to me. But we would go out and spend time with this other group, and they'd have meetings in the house, and for me it was kind of just a lot of fun because the kids would be all running amok and jumping on a trampoline and all that kind of stuff. And so I wasn't necessarily enamored with those folks because I was seeing a lot of, God there. It was just friends more than anything. And
yeah.
Long story short, my folks have become pretty disillusioned, I guess, with, kind of the traditional church thing going on there that they've been part of. And they're pretty dedicated. They've been part of that church for about 15 years, before I was even born. And had some bad experiences. I think something to the effect of my dad was a cabinet maker, and he had some situations where the market kind of went bad, and some of the jobs, like the kitchens that he would make cabinets for and install, were really expensive kitchens. They were tens of thousands of dollars sometimes, and I know he ended up having to go bankrupt because some folks went bankrupt or so on. He couldn't make payroll. He ended up in some legal situations over it and so on. I remember we went for a time without power, to our house. And,
wow.
And so, the church, the church we were part of, they gave us a key to the gym and let us go take showers down there and so on. But, from what, I was young. I didn't know really what was going on at the time, but kind of hearing about it later. I think there was some kind of speculate in condemnation kind of coming from various people in that church, maybe this was judgment for something secret going on or something like that,
Yeah.
So I think those sorts of things really kind of just lent to an overall, disillusionment. Like mom and dad were looking for something that they weren't finding. So when they kind of met this other group, they got pretty excited and they tried to get other people excited, and they didn't get anybody else excited. So we ended up moving out there, or at least close by. It was kind of, at that time, it was really hard to find housing nearby. So we were a lot closer, but still not super close. And just kind of joined that group. And that was a ride, so that would have been back in 1991 or so, I think. And there was a pretty small group of people, just a few families. And so I would have been about 11 or 12. And then over the next few years, Gabe and your folks' family came, like a year or so later. And,
so you were there first playing basketball, and then my dad, all tall, and came along and joined you guys.
Yeah, something like that. Yeah. Yeah. So we were just a bunch of boys. The boys all hung out together and so on. But it grew pretty quick because, my folks came to that group because of their experience with a home birth. And that kind of turned into sort of a ministry thing. I think my mom even started, well, I don't think, I know. She was a midwife for a while as well.
Yeah.
And so we would just have a bunch of people. We would kind of do like a meeting on Sunday, like a kind of a gathering to get together and worship and so on. Then after that meeting, they'd have another meeting where it was a home birth meeting, and all these people who were looking at having a birth or who had had a birth or so on, they would come. That'd be sometimes a pretty big gathering of people. And, one of the things that was neat was, God would just show up at these births and do pretty amazing things. And it got a lot of people excited, and it was kind of an opportunity to talk to them about, following God together in a real close walk together. So the church really grew. So I got baptized when I was 13. I think I was about to turn 14, but I was 13. And what's funny is we had done a slumber party the night before for, I think, Jason's birthday or something like that, and we stayed up all night long. Like, we didn't go to sleep. I think I might have fallen asleep, after it got light the next day. And the next day, though, that was on a Saturday. The next day was Sunday, and we, the whole church met out at a park to have a gathering together.
Yeah, and then the baptism.
Yeah, and some folks were getting baptized and so on. And I wanted to be a part of that. And, I think that was actually real. I wanted to follow God, I don't think I ever at that point in my life had struggled with kind of wondering if God was real or anything. So I was like, yeah, if they're doing this, I want to be a part of it too. But I still remember kind of looking back at that time, I was like, man, I was punch drunk. I was just so sleepy. So who knows how that decision was affected in my sleep. But I remember just, there was a big lake that was at that park, and we had done the baptisms. And so we were all out in the lake. There was probably about six or eight people or so getting baptized, and we were standing around holding hands, praying beforehand. I just remember just feeling dizzy because I was so sleepy. But so that was.
I've heard that. I remember reading my driver's handbook when I was studying, because I actually studied for my driver's test.
Yeah.
And they, are you laughing because I'm a bad driver?
I'm not saying anything.
I think he's mocking you because he didn't study.
Lame.
I studied, okay, man?
Okay. Sure. But they said that driving while sleep deprived is just as dangerous as driving drunk.
Sure.
And I've always remembered that. So like when I get 2 hours of sleep and then the next day I'm like, oh, Hope I do fine today, I guess.
Yeah, it's not near as dangerous as driving while sleeping, but it is
Right.
pretty bad.
So wait, you made this decision to get baptized the day of the baptism.
Yeah. Yep.
Well, there wasn't
Oh.
like any previous deep thought about baptism or anything like.
No,
you
I
had
knew
been
what it
thinking
was.
About it,
No.
or...
No, I knew what it was, and I guess that would have been a good thing to say. Like, there had been several baptisms, of different people in the church and so on. And, that was kind of unusual, I think for them. It was mainly adults, and it was mainly Christian adults, who had already at some point in their lives gotten baptized. But, they kind of came to this point where things had changed so much, and they kind of looked back, and I think they wanted to get rebaptized. A lot of them, not everybody was,
Right.
but so it was happening. I would say relatively often at that point. It was something I was familiar with. But yeah, no, it wasn't something I really talked with beforehand with my folks or anything like that I remember. We had, that being said, we had talked a lot, over the years about what it meant to follow God and so on. But, yeah, when it came to that day, I was like, I want to do this. And, my dad was like, that's fine. That's good, And so I did. And, and I was excited. And then I went home and went to sleep. But, but, I think it was kind of odd as well because being real young, maybe it wasn't just being young. I don't know what I expected from that, there wasn't like some magic that happened, I would say, feeling wise. And I know you guys both know
Fairies
exactly
came
what,
and
no,
sprinkled dust on you as you came up out of the
No.
water.
no. And, there wasn't any visible tongues of fire or anything like that. But, I don't know that really bothered me. I think I was just like, okay, this is really what I want to do. Now, after that, I think I was 13 at the time. So, I don't know if y'all know anything about 13-year-olds.
I know I
yes.
was one.
14-year-olds or anything like
I
that.
have 1 year of experience with 13-year-olds.
Right. So anyway, it was kind of, things happened in my life where, we were still part of that church, and, to this day, I've been part of that church. It changed, the way it looked a whole lot, but, I obviously, well, not obviously, I just went through times where making the decision to do what was right, or to do what I wanted to do, wasn't as easy as I thought it was going to be,
Yeah.
and,
You're telling me.
everything from, I don't know, pursuing girls or, even just being lackadaisical about pursuing God, I think that's even more the core thing. Like I was a kid, I was doing kid things. And now I think most folks would probably look back at my childhood and be like, wow, you were such a, you were pretty good back then and so on. But not really, I was just me doing my own thing. I didn't really have any sort of compunction to, I don't know, do something radical and really follow God with everything. Now, a lot of that was probably just due to peer pressure. It was like, all this stuff was going on with the church, and we were all kind of part of it. And it was kind of weird. Like I look back at it now, and it's like, I was watching all of these adults make really big radical choices to follow God. And I think, I'm glad for that because I feel like that was kind of one of the things that really kept me through the harder teen years of my life. Because I'm watching a demonstration of people making some pretty hard choices and going through hard things. And I know as a parent now, I've kind of got that drilled in my head. It's not always the easiest thing to do, but you wonder what's the best thing to do for your kids. And
As a demonstration.
yeah, I think so. Yeah, because I know that's what really helped me. Watching my parents, watching other people's parents, and other adults, really kind of set this demonstration of what it meant to follow God with your whole heart. And I could tell this isn't easy, and I think that really that helped, actually, that it wasn't easy. It helped that everything wasn't always rosy, that there was a lot of conflict sometimes, and I don't know how much y'all have gotten into on Rose Creek Village and what it looked like back in the day,
Right.
On this podcast. But we went through some pretty wild things,
Mm-hmm.
and so, yeah, I don't know. So anyway, fast forward. Yep. Try not to ramble too much here.
No, you're totally good.
It's what we like.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of
We
any
don't
sort
have
of
to talk.
significant things. There were significant things, that were probably, they may seem a little silly to people, but, like I had a girlfriend. I think I had like one, and, I know I behaved in ways that ended up kind of hurting other people. And, that was a hard thing for me to wrestle with,
Mm-hmm.
I see at this point that was kind of probably some of the first time I really had to kind of wrestle with, the potential evil inside, not like I never did anything bad before that, but I don't know, when you're kind of doing ad hoc bad things, sometimes you just kind of turn a blind eye to it. You're running with the pack or whatever, but when it impacts other people, that's where it's kind of,
Yeah.
to me, that's always been, the harder thing to take, and
Sometimes it's a good thing. Sometimes what you
Mhm.
need to take.
yeah. So, when we were, let's see, a few years later, it was about, I guess 1995, we met some folks from up in Tennessee, and, they wanted some people from that church now that we were part of to come up there and help them start a fellowship. And, long story short, we ended up sending some folks up there, and over the next, half year to a year, as a church, everybody had grown so close. Like, we had good friends, but there was a real love that got given us together, and we didn't like being apart from each other. So they all decided, that they were going to just move everybody, whoever wanted to go. It wasn't a mandatory thing, but everybody made the decision. I don't think anybody didn't make the decision, actually. And at that time, there was close to 100 people in the fellowship.
Mm-hmm.
So that was another one of those things, watching that happen, and we were one of the last families to actually move up to Tennessee. We weren't the last, I think. Semka and actually my wife's family were the last.
Mm-hmm.
But and Nathaniel, I think those were kind of the last three, if I remember right. And it took about a year or so to get everybody migrated north, because what they had to do was quit their jobs, sell their houses, pack everything up.
About how many families total was that? Do you know? Like, just a rough estimate.
Man,
20? 30?
maybe. I don't think it was quite 20.
Hmm.
I would say something more like 15, and that might have been high. I don't know. There's some larger families,
Seemed like there were two families.
kind of. I'm pretty sure we had somewhere between 80 and 90 people in the church at the time. There were a few families actually shared houses together. Not everybody did, but a good amount did at that point, and that had kind of started because, Noah's family always had somebody living in their house. They were taking care of, like, Dossie's family, and,
Right.
single mother, and so on. But then there was a couple situations like that came up where, like I know, we ended up moving in with Dossie's family as well, so we can kind of help take care of her family. And there was varying degrees of success in the beginning on that, everybody having to figure that out, living together, so on. But sometimes that was kind of like one of the only ways we could get together in the same locality, because it was kind of hard finding houses nearby in that area.
Mm-hmm.
But at any rate, so we did that move, and watching everybody do that, that was another pretty big impactful thing, watching, people do something that seemed to come right out of the book of Acts, leaving everything, and just because they loved each other, just because they wanted to follow God together. And then moving up to a place in Tennessee that was like half finished, or not even half finished, it's still being built. And,
Cow pasture.
yeah.
Oh wait, no. This was before the cow pasture, wasn't it? This was.
Yeah. This is Mash 'em In.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so when we moved up, it was basically a house, like a 3 or 4 bedroom farmhouse, and they had built a big addition on the back of it with like 8 bedrooms and 4 bathrooms or something like that, and a big dining hall in the bottom. It's like 3 stories.
One of my friends at work, she works in the same area as me.
Mm-hmm.
She lives just down the street from there.
Yeah.
And so she's like, oh, everybody talks about that house and the weird people who used to live there. And I just laugh at her. And
those weird people.
She talks
was
about
us.
the misconceptions and all this. And I was just like, yeah. I knew those people. I know those people.
Yeah.
So.
Well, I can kind of understand people freaking out. I mean, that's not a very normal thing when a large group of people just moves en masse to a location.
One house.
Yeah, and around here in Tennessee, like, one of the famous times that happened was when, the hippie train from California came through and started the farm.
Yeah.
Oh, nice.
Yeah. Just a long caravan of tons of school buses and RVs came trolling through,
Well.
So they kind of had some, they didn't know what they were looking at. Anyway, so I would have been about 17 by the time we landed up here, and I loved God. I think I really did love God. It's kind of funny. I don't know how I necessarily compartmentalized, the struggles that I would have, on the one hand, and feeling, trying to pursue God on the other. But, just young, not knowing much.
Mm-hmm.
So when we got up here to Tennessee, pretty soon after that, I'd taken a shine to Ariel, who's now my wife, so I would have been 18 around then. And that was kind of another, I would say, linchpin moment in life, because I got pretty lonely after we moved up. My whole circle of friends had pretty much changed because everybody had moved up, for the most part. Most of my friends had all kind of come up to Tennessee, and our alliances all kind of shifted. It was very dramatic growing up. I don't know.
We
like
know about dramatic
geez,
stuff.
I don't know
too.
what in the world. I look back now, I'm like, for some reason, like, there was like 2 or 3 cliques of kids, and like you could only be part of one at a time,
Right.
And I don't know who made those rules up or whatever. It just kind of flowed that way. Yeah. Personalities graded against each other and so on.
Yeah, we know about that.
Yeah. So that was really frustrating. But when I got up here, it was like, that thing I'd mentioned earlier about, having a girlfriend and not behaving very well to her. And, that was kind of one of the problems, because that had caused some hard feelings amongst other people in my friend group, Right. And so then I didn't know anything about it till I got up to Tennessee, and I was met with a very cold shoulder from everybody I thought would be very happy to see me, and they were not happy to see me. And so it was I don't know, it was kind of lonely, you
Yeah.
know. And that was kind of weird because we had a lot of people. We had almost 100 people living out of that one house, and RVs, and
Yeah.
holes in the ground and so on all around it. you know. But so anyway, um, so our mutual friend Simca, she played matchmaker, and
Oh, of course.
yeah, and long story short, I took a shine to Ariel, and I don't know. I thought she took a shine to me. She kind of denies it at this point, at least that early.
It's how she keeps that hold on you.
Yeah. But anyway, so like I said, her family was one of the last family, if not the last family, to move up.
Mhm.
So anyway, I spent a good deal of time with her or whatever, and at that point, I think I think I was just reeling. I didn't know what to do with myself very well. So I was just kind of pursuing her, like, hey, will you be my girlfriend? Without actually saying that, because that was kind of having boyfriend girlfriend thing wasn't a very looked well upon thing in our community, right? So I
Those
wouldn't
were
have said
bad
that,
words,
but yeah,
boyfriend and
but I'd
girlfriend.
followed her around, I was giving her a lot of attention and so on. And I don't honestly remember how long that went on. It wasn't that long, but um, this little woman, Havla, she pulled me aside one day in the kitchen. She's like, "Would you leave her alone? Can't you see you're distracting her from God?" And it was like somebody walloped me upside the head with, with a frozen trout. Okay, it was shocking.
That's rather
Yeah.
specific.
But I don't know. It was just kind of like the lights clicked on, and I just, I think what I'm trying to illustrate here is there's always kind of the tension, the push and the pull between the things I wanted to do, the pulls of, the culture or whatever,
Yeah.
and then the thing inside of me that wanted to follow God, God calling me to follow Him more, and so on. And so when that would actually rise to the surface where I could see it for what it was, because apparently I was just dumb as a rock, then, I would have kind of these moments in life. There was kind of these milestones, and
Yeah.
I'm not talking about all of them, but these are a few of them. And that one was one that kind of really made me wrestle. So I remember at that point, I wished I had done this a lot earlier, but, for whatever reason I didn't. But this time I did. I went to my dad. I was like, told him what was going on, and basically got somebody involved in my life to know, hey, I'm really having a hard time with this, and I want to do better, and so then came the radical years. Then it was just kind of like I was like going to dive all in,
Yeah.
and that was a real, that was a pretty sweet time. I remember, I think at this point, like, I kind of wish that I could have had a bit more wisdom around some of the things, decisions being made and all that, but it was all in, for good reasons. But,
Yeah.
like I remember one time I decided, I just want, basically, I got too much stuff. It's weighing me down. I just want to be free to do whatever God wants me to do. Maybe He's got me, maybe He wants me to go to the mission field or something. And so I basically gave away everything I had, except for like a sleeping bag, a pillow, my guitar, and some clothes, and that was it.
Wow.
And
Goodness.
so I kind of went.
Minimalist.
You were minimalist
Almost,
before
yeah.
minimalism
Oh, yeah.
was cool.
Yeah, it was more like asceticism, and that didn't last all that long. But it was exciting, because I was a bit more free to kind of immerse myself in the things that were going on in the church and things God was doing with me and with other people and so on. And, this thing that it started off as kind of this infatuation with a girl, that was kind of the big struggle at that point in my life, because it was like, how do you overcome that? How do you get rid of it? How do you, what do you
Mhm.
do? And well, it's not like you just switch the light off, you know? So it was more learning discipline,
Mhm.
learning, learning how to be, learning how to deny yourself, like
Mhm.
you gotta, if you're going to follow God and, you see that what you're doing is just kind of inherently selfish, then you should not do that thing, but that doesn't mean that you don't then want to do that thing necessarily,
Yeah.
right? And so, that was a pretty long learning process. The long and the short of that, though, was, you know, essentially this silly infatuation. It did go away, but it got replaced by actual genuine love. Like I actually fell in love, and um, but at that point, I was kind of charting this course with going, I want to walk with God,
Mhm.
and it didn't mean I didn't mess up. I had all kinds of mess ups, and you know, but and I probably just I'm someone who can overthink things. So when we started talking about actually getting married and so on, like I analyzed that to death. I know I probably about burned my wife out. Um, are we supposed to get married? Or not? And yeah, we're supposed to get married. So we got engaged when we were 18, I guess. No, I guess we would have been 19.
You guys are
Um,
both 19.
I don't remember. I'm terrible with dates.
Oh, okay, no worries.
Don't tell my wife. Are you going to broadcast this? Um,
Oh no, she might hear it.
yeah, I don't remember how long we were engaged for, but it wasn't. I don't think it was a year. So we had basically prior to being engaged, we had walked together and pursuing a relationship, trying to see, is this what are we right for each other? Is this what God, is God going to bless us or not? And then we ended up, asked her to marry me. I'll tell you all that story another time.
I think I've heard it.
Yeah,
There was rain involved, and
and everything going not according to plan. Yes.
It wasn't like that scene from Pride and Prejudice. I assume that's how they all go.
No, that was way too romantic. Yeah. I mean, you can't have something that romantic when you're going to ask a girl to marry you. There has to be crutches
preposterous.
and a sudden storm and
Everything.
lots
needs
of
to go wrong.
nervousness. Yeah. And overprotective adults with flashlights looking in windows and so on. So, yeah. So anyway, we got married. Well, I should say we got engaged, and then we ended up moving from that place. The whole church moved to the cow pasture that you were referring to earlier. Yeah, out here. So I think we moved out in the summertime or so on, and towards the end of September 25th, we got married up there on the hill in the torchlight because we didn't have any power, at least up there. And that was pretty awesome.
That was in the evening, so that's why you had torchlight.
Well, we did a 2-day wedding. I mean, you're going to do a wedding, you got to do it right. So we did like a fun day, the first day where, we had games and they did like a horse jousting and all kinds of crazy stuff. Yeah.
You sit on the sidelines and like pluck grapes and
No,
people jousted, or
not
did
that
you
day.
actually join it?
Well, I didn't do the horse jousting, but yeah, we did games and stuff. And then the next day we did a big feast out under a tree, and and then had kind of, I don't know what to call it, the celebration or the ceremony.
Yeah.
Right.
On the top of the hill, and that took a long time because basically it was her and I sitting there in front of everybody, and each family taking turns coming up and blessing us. It was pretty awesome. We rode up on horses and rode away on horses too. Yeah. And they were draft horses. Yeah, they were
Draft horses.
Yeah, they were big horses. Yes.
Oh, okay. So
Oh,
big
yeah.
horses.
Yeah. And we rode them bareback, and a draft horse's bareback is Uncomfortable.
Not
So-
comfy.
So, anyway, so yeah, we got married, and that was like the day after I turned 20.
Wow.
So I think, at that point it was like, there were still things like, even like some secret sins and stuff that I was just struggling with that, I hope they would go away, in time or whatever.
Just blow away.
Yeah. And they didn't, and they, honestly, they came out a little bit later, a couple years later or so on. And, I won't go into that too much, but it's not an uncommon thing. And, but it was pretty devastating to me when that kind of came out. And, basically I had some brothers get involved in my life, and, I think I was about 22, and, at that point, our marriage was struggling pretty good, just being a couple of years into it, and I don't know what in the world we were doing and so on. And I'm just grateful we had a bunch of people who loved us around us, because I don't know, honestly, at that point, with, as much as I knew and as she knew or whatever, if we would have been able to survive, but we did, God was good to us. But I remember, so I'm saying this whole long story to kind of get into this point because, I hear these stories sometimes from other people where, like they didn't know God at all, and then they come to know God, and it's a very sudden change,
Mm-hmm.
And sometimes I think I used to wish, like, I wish that could have been me,
Yeah. I know what you're talking about.
It just seems like everything's kind of very black and white. Like before it was black and now it is white. And it's never been the case for me. In some ways, I feel like I came at things very backwards, or, just the long road. Everything's the long road, So, these are all silly things. There's lots of other things besides, but I look back and, God was just good to me the whole time, like I didn't know how much he loved me. And I think that just walking in, in a level of darkness, walking in some sin, whatever, it does things to your brain.
Mm-hmm.
You can't see things that are true. And, I was able to just kind of, for a long time, just think I was a good person. Just a good person, just had some struggles or whatever. And, when the lid came off of that kind of a thing, then, it was devastating for me because all of a sudden things were black and white. They were very black and white, and I got to see just how black I was. Now, I think I've had people comment that before that maybe that wasn't such a, there's been people who deal with worse things in life. And I know there's all kinds of things that people go through, and I'm not trying to compare to anything like that, but all I know is I hit a point, where I did not like myself at all. It was like I walked around, I'm sure there was a level of depression. I wouldn't have known to call it depression at that point, I didn't go on very long, but just seeing how much, my actions and choices I had made in life had come back and hurt, especially like my wife, my family, people around me. Like, I don't like hurting people, It's kind of silly to look back and see just how much, I have hurt people in the past, and, how sometimes your idiocy can make you do that. But, I've got a pretty tender heart. I don't like hurting people. I like loving on people, and that was really hard for me. And I just did not like the person, I guess because I had gone for so long thinking I was one way, and then waking up to find out that was never true. For the most part, that was never true. And it got less true and less true the older I got, and, I just was astounded by how could I not have seen this, and I would wake up just kind of with this pit in my stomach, just kind of a loathing of myself, not knowing what to do. I didn't know how to get it out of it, And when I say that, I just mean like, how do you change? Like, how do you change? And, but in the midst of all that, I had people around me, and I had people around me who knew me. They knew the worst about me, and they loved me. They showed me love, and then I remember I had a couple of experiences right in that period of time where, I would be by myself, and really struggling and just feeling God drawing near me and really just feeling love,
Yeah.
And that was just about the biggest impact on my life ever. I think it was the first time I really richly encountered the love of God directed at me, or at least being able to understand what it was. And maybe it was just because I needed it so bad at that point, when I was realized just how undeserving that I was, because I didn't love myself.
Right.
Not anymore. I think I loved myself a whole lot before then, but then I didn't love myself at all, And that was when God chose to draw near me, So, it's funny because, after that, I was just I was all in, and I still had, I still had all kinds of things I needed to change my head and heart and so on, but who doesn't,
Yeah.
But it's kind of funny. So I kind of look at that and be like, and that was the point in which I was saved. But no, I think that was just the point where it was like, I took a step forward more like an adult in the Lord, to follow the Lord rather than just a child. And I don't think there's anything wrong with being a child. I just look back and go, I had a lot of growing up to do the whole time. And he was there with me the whole time and let me grow up.
Right.
Helped me to grow up, And then not long after that, even kind of while I was in the midst of things, and I honestly don't remember the exact circumstances around it. I just remember I was talking to an older guy in the church. He was at that time he would have been one of the the shepherds in the church, and I was complaining about another guy. I honestly don't remember who. I wouldn't tell you anyway, but I don't remember who. I don't remember. I just remember, I'd gotten offended or something. And when I was talking to him, I remember realizing he was kind of half listening to me, and he was kind of waiting to say something. And when he did say something, man, he kind of land blasted me. He's like, basically he just went, you're just prideful. You just got a lot of pride, and that's kind of the root of a lot of the problems that you are running into in your life. And it was kind of like this light clicked on, and everything, when he said that, I remember there kind of being this choice to make as to how I was going to take this. Like, I remember having the very conscious decision to make. Am I going to be offended with this, or am I going to listen to this? And thankfully, I chose to listen to it, but it was scary because when I listened to it, then that was kind of the last thing. Like that was the last rug at that point that needed to be pulled out from under me. And that just wrecked me. It really just kind of wrecked me. But I had already kind of started to really fall in love with God and saw his love for me. So it was a good wrecking, It wasn't just leaving me stranded with nowhere to go or anything like that. It was just kind of tearing down this picture of myself that I had built up over the years. And that was kind of the last vestiges of that picture. Mm-hmm. It got trampled on and smashed to a pulp. And then that was great, because after that, I would... I don't remember a lot, honestly, of distinct things, big events or anything like that. I just started to try to be more responsible, love people. I was a little bit more humble,
Yeah.
I had this thing in my back pocket of like some compassion for other people because, I actually saw that I was a little bit worse,
Yeah. I
you know?
I had a lot of people tell me after like talking to me about stuff that happened with me, because I had a lot of people close to me when I had a lot
Yeah.
of stuff when I'm not going to go into all the stuff that I did, but
Eli was a terrible person.
I want details.
horrible person. But they said that your story was similar to mine in that way, and I'm like, wow, because I'd always kind of known God a little bit because I grew up with my dad, and my dad,
Yeah.
he was a Christian for a long time, ever since I've known him. So growing up and always hearing about it, I was like, yeah, okay, I believe this and I believe that, and until I finally had some big things happen where I had to face that I wasn't a good person on my own, and I had to figure out how to be better, and that I couldn't be better on my own. Yeah,
Yeah.
it was a really big step in that.
Yeah. And it's funny because like even those things where we used to talk some about how God will kind of rewrite history,
Mm-hmm.
And I think when you start facing things in life, where you start seeing yourself and your need for God and, just how corrupted you are or how evil you are. And that evil can take all kinds of forms. Maybe you're just greedy. Maybe you're just prideful or just mean. I don't know. Or
I'm probably the really
or
mean one.
or indifferent,
Yeah.
There's all kinds of ways that that shows up. But I've just always seen God kind of he knows what buttons to push.
Yeah. I
He
mean,
knows
he knows us.
Yeah, he knows what string to pull on, and all of a sudden you find yourself naked, and that is uncomfortable,
Yeah.
But anyway, when you find yourself like that, you're like, how can this ever go away? How can this ever, and it never goes away in the sense of that is a memory, like it really happened. But God rewrites history because those things become then a force for good,
Yeah.
Like to me, they give me compassion. That was an important thing. Still is an important thing to me. I still find myself like, I don't know. I'm not saying I'm an immensely loving, compassionate person, but I know for sure, like, there's kind of a constant inner monologue when I hear about people or things happening that are bad, being like, I don't, at least most of the time, I don't exalt myself above that person. Because like, I would be just like that. I would be just like
Right.
that, And that, that's just a gift from God. It's not because I'm a good person. Quite the opposite. But, and not only that, then the things that, your struggles, the overcoming of those struggles, they give you something to own, And I've been able to, own something around that. And I hope that's helped and had an impact on other people. I know there's been a fair bit of, sharing with and reaching out to other folks who I'm close to around similar things.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So, and it's kind of funny because after that, then, we started doing things like trying to take care of other. I don't know how to really describe it. The way that the church was kind of operating at that point, there was sort of a few different shepherds, and there was some other guys who would kind of help do some shepherding work. I don't know what else to call that. It's nothing. There wasn't anything really super official or anything like that. There was just, we had a lot of people at one point. There was probably over 300 people.
Yeah, there was a lot here.
Yeah, and a lot of households and so on. There was a lot to do in the sense of just helping people out, hearing problems um, and so on. And, and I kind of got thrown into that pretty young. I would have been about 24 at the time.
They asked you to do shepherding work?
Well, it
24?
wasn't really shepherding work, I guess.
It was just
I
helping.
look back, well, it was just, practically all it meant was that we kind of divvied up different households in the sense of I would go and check on people in a household, and see if there was anything I could do to help them, or if they needed anything, like if they needed to get in contact with a shepherd or something like that, I could help facilitate that or so on. So it was kind of like, I guess the only thing I've seen, that was similar like that and that comes to mind right off the top of my head in the Bible was, Moses having different people over different people and so on down, but it wasn't like official shepherding work, but it did require some leveling up in responsibility.
Yeah.
I wasn't sitting down counseling people or anything like that, but it got me out of my own life and problems into, and so things just progressed from there in the sense of, we always had things going on, activities and in the village and in the church. And, it was just a pretty tight part.
Yeah.
Always going to different meetings and being parts of different groups and so on. And, then eventually, my family ended up moving out to California. And we kind of did a home fellowship out there.
With Gavin.
Gavin's family came out there after I guess we'd been there almost a year or something like that. And then their family moved out there, and we had a few other families already out there.
Mm-hmm.
And that was a real sweet time. And ultimately we ended up moving back here to the village. And now, we've been back here for a few years. There's seasons for everything, and like I just mentioned, at one point there was like 300 some odd people here, and now there's, maybe a third of that, if not, if that, and the way we operate here and so on has really changed over the years, and I would say a lot of those changes have really, I'm just being honest, they've rattled me a lot,
Yeah.
But I've come to see that's a good rattling. Just like most of the rattlings in life, it's good.
Yeah.
You know,
Shakes off all the unnecessary stuff.
so that kind of brings us up to date in a very kind of broad brushy, vague sort of way.
Yeah. That's fine.
You know,
That's what everybody does.
so now I'm 41 and got lots of kids. You know, and we're living here, and my wife is a midwife. So, you know, it's been a hard year, just like it has for everybody. But with, you know, the COVID-19 pandemic going on, you know, with all the social distancing and everything like that, in some ways, I kind of felt like that hit our family a little bit harder than a lot of other folks, because my wife was having to care for a lot of babies and new moms and so on. So we had to isolate a lot more.
Yeah.
And a lot more carefully, I think, than some other folks. And so it's been some seasons of just loneliness, you know, that I'm not used to. And so we're kind of coming out of that season a bit, but yeah.
So I have a question for you, since that pretty much brings us up to date.
Up to date, yeah.
So a portal opens up over there, that side of the room, and it just swirls up and there's sparks going everywhere.
Like in Doctor Strange.
And you see little David right there. He had just finished selling all his stuff, and he's just sitting there with his guitar and his sleeping bag and his pillow. And you've got like 10 seconds to walk through the portal because the portal's closing, to ask him, not ask him, but give him advice. What would be your advice you gave to David sitting there? He's looking into your eyes, big brown eyes, strumming on his guitar. He's like, what are you going to say?
Oh my gosh.
Ground control to Major Tom. Yeah.
I would probably tell him. It's funny. It sounds kind of cheesy to say it like this, but that's a cheesy question. So
Sure,
it's true.
I know that.
But this isn't cheesy. I would tell him, Jesus really, really, really loves you, and you ought to just learn how to love him back. Get to know him. Just get to know him, and that would take up all my 10 seconds. And
You just walk past the
that'd be
portal.
it. Yeah.
So long, little David.
Yeah. Because, to me, that's been the most important thing. And, I mentioned earlier in this talk somewhere that I always feel like I kind of come to things a bit backwards. And one of the features that I've come to know from a lot of other folks' story is usually, the pattern I see is when people don't know God, they come and they experience the love of God. They come to know Jesus. And then, so they become Christian that way. And then they want to find the church. They want people to be with, And so then they find people to be with. And that's kind of the way. And for me, it was the opposite.
Yeah, it's people to be with.
I grew up with people to be with, I grew up in it. And
then you go, oh, this is what you guys are all about.
Yeah, and it's funny because it's it's not like I didn't know God in the midst of that church or whatever, but so much of my experience with God was so couched in community, let's say, that in some ways it was my experience, but it was also experiencing what God was doing with other people too. And I think that's good. I don't think that's a bad thing. But I do know that for whatever reason, there were some, let's say, not very well-rounded aspects of that where my own, personal relationship with Jesus was just a little bit on the thin side, Yeah. So these other experiences, like especially moving away to California, because we were out there for almost 7 years, something like that.
Oh, yeah.
Yeah, it was a while. And, because we didn't leave, the church here to get away from it. It was just, it felt like that's what we were supposed to go do, to go be a part of something happening out there for a little bit. And so we did that. But man, all of a sudden you didn't have this thriving church community around you. And a small one kind of grew up over time, and that was real sweet. But there was this period of time where I was like, I really need to, get close to God. And, I didn't have, a lot of options necessarily to lean on other people right then, so that was real. It was like going to the gym. But, through that, like getting to know Jesus, actually getting to know him, not know the things about him, but getting to know him,
Right.
That's been huge. It changes everything, It's even changed my approach of trying to tell, other people about God. And, it's very church centric before. And I love the church. I believe in it. I think it's really important to God. I think it's important. Like, I think it's the right environment for Christians, And, like in the New Testament, there wasn't a difference. It's kind of, I guess, kind of an unheard of thing a bit to be a Christian, not be part of the church, But, those Christians, they knew Jesus.
Yeah.
You know, that was the key. That was the thing. It wasn't all about the church.
Yeah.
So that's what I tell my kids. That's what I tell other people. Like, more than anything else, you should know God. You know, He wants to know you.
Yeah.
You know, do you know Him? Does He know you?
That's
You know?
good.
That's good.
And if I wish that had been more clear to me. I don't think a 10-second little thing would actually give me the clarity I would need. I'd probably be like, whoa, you know. But I don't think
just
that would
go-
have given me the clarity I needed at that point.
You would have said, I know that.
Yeah. But, you know, and it's not like it's not like other people weren't telling me those sorts of things or anything like that. It wasn't like we didn't talk about Jesus or anything like that, but I don't know. I wish that had been a bit more of a focus early. Really, really early for me, you know?
Yeah.
That sounds like a good stopping point to me. Unless you have anything else. Parting words for the listeners. Just say, go ye and be free.
Parting words. No, Jesus loves you and he's worth loving. Yeah.
Yeah. Or the VeggieTales ending.
No.
God
Oh,
loves you.
gosh.
No, we're not. We're
You
not.
better edit that
He
out.
loves you very
I'm
much.
glad you and I are on the same train on this one.
My
It has been a
goodness.
lonely fight against him this whole
Hey,
podcast.
I'm just. Sometimes you just gotta quote it, man. Sometimes it's appropriate. Sometimes it's fun. You ever had fun before, Gavin?
No, I don't. I'm a Christian, remember? We don't have fun.
What?
I'm just playing.
You are no nephew of mine.
Okay, well, thank you very much for coming on the podcast.
You're welcome.
I love, yeah. I think I've heard bits and pieces of your story, but never like in a complete layout like that. And
Yeah.
Yeah, same.
it's-
Well, I can make it a lot more complete, but it'd be a long podcast, much,
Right.
much longer.
right.
You know?
I've heard intricate, small versions of parts of those stories. So
Yep.
Yeah. Oh, you know, I will throw in one quick story because this is an important thing,
Go for
okay.
I think, and I don't know why I forgot it. So I was miraculously healed.
Oh
yeah.
yes.
Yeah.
it. I was going to
So-
ask you about this, but I wasn't sure if you just were leaving out.
No, I didn't even think about it. So it was when I was 19. So we would do these big celebrations every year. We called them the Ingathering. At that point, I don't think it had turned into that cultural arts festival, the Village Fest later on.
Right.
But at that point, it was just we would do this once a year celebration. It was kind of just for the church, and I don't know if it was probably Noah. Like there always had to be a theme. Like there was. It was a
Yeah,
theme.
I remember
And
that.
for some
We'd
reason,
always
there
have
was like a
theme.
phase where it was always 4 things. There was always 4.
Yeah.
You know, 4 seasons or the 4 winds or, and
Yes.
so this one year it was the 4 horsemen, and they were going to do, as part of the celebration thing, one of the evenings they were going to do these dances, and they were going to use horses in these dances. Okay, so one of the guys in the church had bought this horse.
Mhm.
And it was the red horse. It was kind of a little bit of a reddish brown color. And it was this quarter horse named Shogun. And this horse was muscular. It wasn't that big, but it was muscular. And it was named Shogun for a reason. It was a feisty horse.
Yeah.
Yeah, so it had barn fever, which means that if you're riding the horse and you go in the general direction of the barn, then it will run because it wants to go to the barn, and it will misbehave to get to the barn. And I think its previous owners had basically, anytime it acted up, they'd put it away. And so it learned, if I wanted to go to the barn, all I got to do is act up. So I never really rode horses growing up. And my mother-in-law, Mercy, they had horses all, she had horses and they were quite comfortable with them and so on. And she had been helping, it was your dad actually that was riding that horse prior to me. and the
Really?
horse bucked him off into a barbed wire fence.
Oh,
And he decided he didn't want to do that anymore.
that makes sense.
So she approached me. And I had no experience with horses, and I don't know why I didn't think that would be a bad idea after hearing about what happened to you.
Yeah, I was gonna say.
It might have been because I was trying to impress her daughter. I don't know.
You're like, I'm not gonna
Yeah.
say
Well, at that
anything,
point, it's
but,
like at any.
So the
You could
idea
do
was
anything.
I'd learn how to ride this horse, and
Yeah.
you know, we would teach it to do a few simple things, and it would be part of this dance later on in the year. What that really looked like was I was learning how to ride on a horse that needed some real mental help. And so we go out in the field on these hills, you know, and we get to the top of the hill and we turn around, and she'd say, okay, try to basically, you know, trot or walk. And the horse would take off full gallop down the hill, and doing everything I could to try to rein it in, you know. And then if it wouldn't listen to you at that point, like, we didn't know anything about the natural horsemanship and stuff that they know now in practice. But, you know, so I'd pull the horse's nose to my knee and make it do circles and get it under control, ride it back, and so on. I just remember it was terrifying
Oh yes.
and very stressful. But this went on for a period of days and so on. And then one evening we were trying to put the horse away, and of course he's trying to run to the barn, and you can't let him get away with that behavior. So we kept having to stop him, and he was getting more and more agitated. And so we were on the road, a gravel road. And so I was just upset and mad at that point. I was like, just behave, because I want to be done with this too, you know. So he started trying to take off again, and so I pull his nose to my knee to make him turn, and he just reared up. And you see this in the movies where they rear up and it's, you know, come back down. Well, it wasn't like that. Like he didn't just rear up. He like just threw himself over backwards on top of me. It was a body slam.
So he
Yeah.
actually landed his back up against you, and your back up against the gravel.
Yeah, I landed on the road. A full-size horse landed on me, and then he was on top of me for a little while, you know, squirming and thrashing his legs, trying to right himself. And we had a Western saddle on, so you have a saddle horn that gets jabbed down your abdomen, then slides up all the way up past your ribs with a, I don't know, 700-800 pounds of horse flesh on top of it.
Oh.
So anyway, he rolled off, and it was just dark at that point. And I remember, it's funny, I remember just vividly like looking at the stars, you know, and realizing I'm about to die. I'm gonna die because everything, like, I don't know if you ever felt like bones. If you've broken a bone and feel that shift of the bones scraping up against each other and
The
things
warmth.
popping and leaking and
Yes.
so on inside. That was all on my chest and my torso and belly. And I couldn't move. I couldn't breathe, and it really hurt. So
By the way, it hurt a lot.
I was like, "Ow!"
Dang, I just had like a 700-pound horse on top of me.
Yeah,
You know when you get your finger pricked at the doctor? It was like that.
yeah. So anyway, Mercy, of course, she ran off to the house, which was
She
you
just
know,
leaves you kind of like
well,
out in the road.
she had to go get help.
under the
We didn't have
stars.
cell phones at that point, you know.
Okay.
Yeah, this was before cell phones. So she ran off to go get help,
BC.
and it was probably 400 feet, 400 feet to the house or something like that. And so I'm just laying there. And I think I just remember praying, God help, you know, and then over like a period of a few seconds or so on, it was like, it felt like kind of like a funnel. I don't know. All these sensations I was feeling just kind of got sucked into a funnel, and, you know, real quickly just kind of got sucked away and went away. And I was able to breathe, and I'm just laying there kind of in shock, like, what just happened?
Mhm.
You know? And, and then of course, like, this was while we were living in Mash Men. So we got you know, about 100 people living in and around this house, you know. And so she goes probably run. I don't know. She probably ran in the house yelling about what happened. And so while she's trying to actually rustle up competent help, all the kids
Oh
were the
no.
first one out the door, right? And so the next thing I know, I'm surrounded by munchkins. You know, I'm like looking up through a sea of little tiny faces. Nobody could help me.
She killed the Wicked Witch.
Yeah. But then Jeshurun, you know,
Comes on.
yeah, he came there and he's like, "You all right?" And I was like, I think I am." He's like, "Let me help you up," you know? And so I stood up, and it was only when I stood up I realized that my arm was broken because I apparently had put it back to break my fall. So I broke my arm right below my elbow. So we walked back out of the house and we got checked out. And aside from that, I had like a little, maybe quarter, the size of a quarter on my back, where it was a little scrape right at the base of my spine, and
What?
no bruising, no scrapes, cuts. I had the
Wow.
broken arm. No, that was it.
Wow.
Yeah.
So you felt like your ribs were broken
Oh yeah.
completely?
Yeah, I don't know how to describe that better. It's just like I've broken a couple bones before, you know, or after, and that's not a nice sensation, you know, to feel that kind of grating. And that was happening multiple places in my body, in my chest,
Wow.
and like ribs were broken or so on. And yeah, but there was no, like,
There's
you would
nothing.
think, like, even with a saddle horn sliding up through your belly and your ribs or something, you'd at least be bruised up or something. There's nothing.
Wow.
That's amazing.
That's cool.
So I knew I'd gotten, I don't know why the arm was left, you know, but
They're like, oh, we could do the arm too, but like, nah, forget the arm.
yeah. Yeah. But, you know, that kept me off the horse.
Oh,
you
yes.
didn't ride
Maybe that
shotgun.
was the whole reason. Yeah. So anyway, but you know, that was funny because even that was all prior to kind of that big turn in my life I was talking about earlier, you know, and that kind of stood out to me later. I should have incorporated that more into
a
the
little
story,
story.
because it wasn't the miraculous thing that really got my attention and
Yeah.
saved me. It was actually just experiencing the love of Jesus. That's why I would say that to the 10-year, or, you know, that if I had that 10 seconds,
Right.
you know, that's why that was the important thing.
Wow.
Yeah. So there's your final story.
That's good.
Cool.
Thank you
Well,
for being
yeah,
here.
Thanks
Yep.
for ending it on that note. Thank you very much for coming on the podcast and taking time out of your busy schedule.
Yeah,
With
you're welcome.
your many kiddos and your wife and your schedule. So, yep.
You are welcome. Thanks, guys.
Yeah.
No problem.
Thank you.
That was David Dickerson. Thank you guys for listening to this episode. We hope you liked it. We're very grateful that you tuned in. We're so glad to have you. I mean, yes, yes, we are. I was choking
He's
up.
not kidding.
I'm choking
And he's
up
also
with how
choking
much
on phlegm.
I really like you guys. No, but for real, thank you. Leave us ratings wherever you can if you
If you so desire.
desire to. We have YouTube now for people listening. That's Staying Christian on YouTube.
Really, if you Google us, everything's gonna come up. We're verified now, so like.
Oh yeah, definitely.
Everything. I'm dead serious though. If you Google us, everything is gonna come up. So if you are looking, that's where we'll be.
Wow, the music.
The music died because we took so long.
I'm sorry.
It's all
Anyways,
good.
we're on YouTube now. We have a Twitter, Stayin' Christian. We have an Instagram, Staying Christian.
Yep.
And we have an email address, stayingchristian@gmail.com. You can write us, tell us how poorly we're doing, how much God hates us, and how much you wish we would die. You could do all of that.
All of the above.
I'm
and
even
more.
considering giving you my phone to text.
I've been trying to steer him away.
I
from
think it'd
that
be a great
direction.
idea. You guys
But,
can just let me know
Leave him
all the things you
voicemails.
hate about my voice, how prideful and egotistical I am when I
Yeah,
tell
yeah.
you what to do.
Yeah.
Just
exactly.
do all that. You can even tell me how much you hate that I tell you to tell me
Or you can
things.
tell him to shut up so you guys can be done with the podcast.
Anyways, thank you guys for listening.
Yep.
Stay real.
Stay Christian.
Bye.
Bye.